And the puppy. All right, we didn't need that. Thank you. Thank you, thank you. All right. So, the last of our Easter little jokes for you this morning that we've been kind of starting with a little fun. So, where do rabbits go after their wedding? On their bunny moon. Why is the Easter bunny so lucky? Because he has 4 rabbit's feet. Ah. Why shouldn't you tell an Easter egg a joke? Because it might crack up. Yeah, right. There'll be a prize for you, Denise, for getting that. And by now, you all know my favorite one. What do you call a line of rabbits jumping backwards? A receding hairline. Yeah. All right. Joy is a good thing for all of us to feel inside. So this is Happy Easter. Welcome and God bless you. And there's our special welcome to Cherie being with us today. We're so glad to have you here. Easter Sunday, here we are. Easter is a celebration of the resurrection of Jesus, the climax of the Holy Week, the story of Jesus, Good Friday, Easter, the death, the resurrection, all reflect the central image in the New Testament affirming God's love, God's mercy, and God's redemption, God's saving grace. Charles Fillmore, our co-founder, the co-founder of Unity, said Easter's inner meaning and spiritual significance are a profound metaphor for a path to a transformed self and the grace that saves us. And the Easter story does offer us a path to rise up in spiritual consciousness to the great I Am, which we have sometimes let be dead and buried in the tomb of worldly things and materiality and fear, doubt, and worry. But the holy path to transformation does involve dying to an old way so that we can be born into a new way. And how great is it that to understand that when all else fails, when a door closes, when we're hurting, when there seems like there's no way out from the devastation of some circumstance, when it's our darkest hour and when all seems lost with no sign of life anywhere, the grace of God gives us the spiritual principle of resurrection so that we can have hope in new life, hope that things can be turned around here in our earthly realm, in our human experience, so that we work with an idea of overcoming, transformation, transmutation. God gives us the grace of spiritual principle of resurrection so we can rise up into new life. And the path to a transformed self through resurrection is recorded in all the Gospels, Mark, Luke, and Matthew. And in Matthew chapter 16, verse 24, it says, if anyone to become my followers, let them deny themselves and take up their cross daily and follow me. And in Unity, we teach that follow me means follow in my way. Jesus is speaking, follow in my way, follow in my teachings. I think I have a slide for that. And when Jesus said to Luke, whoever seeks to gain his life will lose it, but whoever loses his life for my sake will preserve it, he was again teaching that death is a process of surrendering the personal self so that more and more of the spiritual self can live in us, rise up in us. Surrendering the personal self, we become radically centered in God. And this inner death is a letting go of being centered in the ego and all of its anxieties, its preoccupations, its selfish interests, so that we become centered in God. And in every resurrection like this, there is a journey our soul has to make, right? Is it an easy journey? Raise your hand if you've been through a crucifixion and resurrection in your life experience. It's not an easy journey to come through. Even Jesus cried out, now my soul is troubled. What did he say? Now my soul is troubled, and what shall I say? Father, save me from this hour? No, for this purpose was I kept. I think in those extreme situations in our life, we just want to say, get me out of this. Get me out of this. I can't do this. I don't have the strength for this. Whatever it is. And yet, it's the very thing you're being called to in your soul's awakening. For some, a radical centering in God comes from a crisis. Maybe there's a life-threatening illness, there's a bankruptcy, there's a divorce, the loss of a loved one, loss of a job, loss of income, and that hurtles us into a devastation, a feeling of devastation, and then we begin to seek and search for deeper meaning. We begin to kind of look for God. For others, the radical centering in God is just a growing awareness of God in our lives. It's an expansion of our faith. It's why you come here on Sundays to learn and to pray and to serve and to give, and that expands who you are in the Christ of your being. In any case, the radical surrendering and centering to God is learning to put the little me, put the big I in front of the little me. It's how do I call it? Less of me and more of thee, as it shows in the slide here. Radical centering in God. Less of me, the ego self of me, the willfulness of me, the human self of me, and more of thee. And I love this slide because you see the person with their heart illumined, and they're just allowing more of the radiance of the Christ Spirit within them to become larger and larger and larger in their lives. In our series, Doorways to God Consciousness, I've invited you to choose something in your life that you'd like to resurrect. Something that you can work with in our series as we walk through each doorway. And each week we've looked at the actions that Jesus took near the final days of his life to see how he stepped into the resurrection energy, to see how he would model resurrection for us to follow. And first we saw him cleanse the temple, right? Showing us that to make a change in our lives, we must release the old, and sometimes we have to drive it out in bold and dramatic ways. It can't be no more business as usual. If we're going to live radically centered in God, we can't keep up with the old ways and the old thoughts and the old things that we used to do. To become radically centered in God, there can be no more business as usual, and we must overturn everything within us that does not live from the highest ideal or conform to the highest ideal of the Christ. And that's that potter reshaping everything in our lives to conform to the Christ. Secondly, we saw second week, second doorway, we saw Jesus raise Lazarus, and he said about Lazarus, he is not dead, he's sleeping. And he called him forth in a loud voice, again demonstrating in bold and dramatic ways the need for an awakened, activated life force within us. We can't go to sleep to our God potential. And that's when it's usually crisis that wakes us up, right? But we want to begin to live from actively living in the Christ Spirit, actively living from the God self of us, and not needing the cosmic 2x4 in the head to throw us into a crisis, to wake us up to go, oh yeah, I guess I better pray about this. You know, we want to have a spiritual practice that keeps us living in wholeness and life. The third doorway was surrender, and that was what we saw in the Garden of Gethsemane. And that's where it says, lower consciousness must bow down to the sovereign, right? The lower self has to step aside for the higher self within us. Such a surrender can feel like a death, can't it? You've been in that. You have to give up everything that was known and familiar to you when you're in this point of transformation. And some people don't want that depth of surrender. And so they're content to just move along in life okay, their lives are okay. But when we really boldly step into the truth of who we are and whose we are, when we step into that truth and that love, that redemption that's there for us, there is a real surrender. Few of us do go into it willingly. Even in John chapter 12, verse 27, in the garden, Jesus said, Father, if it be possible, let this cup pass me by. Nevertheless, what did he say? Not my will, but thine be done. And Mark Berry had pointed out to us that a wonderful way to phrase that is not my will, but thine be done until my will and thine are one. Right? That surrendering into that deep surrender. Now that kind of surrendering into living from the highest self of you can be scary. We think if we surrender that we won't be in control of our own lives, that we'll appear weak, or that strong people will walk all over us, or we'll have to give up the pleasantries of life. You know, if you surrender to God, then you're not going to become, live from your Christ spirit. You're not going to have any fun anymore. Several people through the years have said to me, I'll probably get religion when I'm older, getting closer to death, but right now I want to have fun. It's just like spirituality is joy. It's pure joy, and you don't want to put that part off. Our fears of surrendering come, I think, because we can't see the new life that God is forming in us. You know, someone once said to me, it's like the computer screen, and you push enter and the next thing comes up. And nothing else comes up until you push enter, and then the next thing comes up, right? And we want to see the whole path. But usually the unfoldment of our lives comes in a process, a series of steps, like we're doing in our doorways to God consciousness. Each step we're walking through. And our fears come because we can't see the new life that God is forming in us. But all those old beliefs, all those old thoughts, all that negativity has to die out so that the bigger reality of who you are can be born. And what follows crucifixion, surrender, can even be scarier because it's crucifixion. And in unity, the cross and the crucifixion is the crossing out, the final crossing out of all the negatives, the crossing out of anything that would keep you living in separation from the Christ Spirit within you. And then we shared that the 3 days, then we go into the tomb, and the 3 days in the tomb are symbolic. Then finally, when you're down for the count, you're closed away in a very intimate and private connection with the Lord of your being, in a communion that is only one-on-one. There's nobody that can do it for you. You have to make this journey, just you and the God self of you. And you're closed away in that tomb for a private communion with God, and that's when invisible, what do I have it here? An aggregation of the powers of spirit are assimilated into us, into our being, and they form a nucleus and a substance to build something new. Charles Fillmore said it, an aggregation of high and holy thought begins to form a nucleus of vitality and substance to build your new life, a new you. In the tomb, the old beliefs like, I'm not good enough, I'm just not good at anything, I'm not worthy, it's not right for me to be loved, I never really succeed at anything. All of that has to die away. All of that has to die away. Closed away with the Lord of your being, with the Lord of our being, it feels like our strength is gone and we feel we can't do it anymore, whatever it is, right? And so the willfulness and the arrogance and the ego-ness of us is dissolved away. It's been crucified and crossed out. And that gives God the opportunity to infuse us in that tomb experience, to infuse us with a pure, redeeming love, so that all that old stuff dies away. And then you're in this purity of the Christ Spirit. And we talked about it being like the caterpillar, that comes into the chrysalis, into that goo, which is just unformed. You lose everything. You lose your shape, you lose your form, you're just goo in that chrysalis. But into that goo, an aggregation of powers of spirit and assimilation comes, and something new starts to form, right? The great I am begins to take root, and those parts of us that have been dead and buried in limitation, in shame, in insecurity, in inferiority, and unworthiness, and guilt, and ignorance, and weakness, and arrogance, they're all dissolved away and transmuted into new life. And in the doorway of assimilation, that's what's happening in the tomb. We're assimilating. We're resting in God, but at the same time, we're gathering strength for the power of the greater demonstration that's going to come. And then we come out of the tomb into ascension. We're not resurrected yet. Out of all of the experiences that are going on, we're in ascension, which is we're in a dimensional shift in consciousness. We've crossed out all that does not belong to us as a child of God. And again, Charles Fillmore says, in ascension, a wiping out of the sense consciousness has been accomplished. We are getting a higher consciousness of life, yet we are getting a consciousness of higher life, yet in this realm, a great and mighty work is still going on. You'll remember last week when we talked about when Jesus came out of the tomb and when Mary discovered him, thought he was the gardener, and then she discovered who he was. She reached for him. And what did he say? Touch me not, for I have not yet, what? Ascended to my Father. Go and tell the disciples, I am ascending to my God and your God. So there's an ascension process. After that crucifixion and surrender and that quiet one-on-one with God, that private intimacy of letting go of everything and assimilating into the new Christ self, we step out and we're still ascending. Jesus understood that when we burst out of the tomb, our highest spiritual development is taking place. It's happening. And if we try to function in our former life, if we try to hang on to our emotions and our entanglements, they'll try to pull us back into what was. Mary said, teacher, rabbi, she wanted that life. And he said, touch me not, for I have not yet ascended to my Father. Mr. Fillmore says we have to avoid clinging emotional entanglements, even though we may have loved them deeply. And I don't know why this thought came to me when I was writing my message, but I thought, if you've healed from a major illness like a heart attack, you can't go back to the greasy fries and the fat-laden double bacon burger, right? Top it off after your meal with a cigarette and expect things to be different. You can't go back to that, even though you may have loved it, right? In the new life, the purification that takes place in the tomb will diminish that feeling, diminish those negativities, diminish those. And I eat a burger, I do, but I cut it into fourths. It takes me 4 days to eat it. I eat a fourth of it every day, when I eat one. But anyway, whatever it was, when you say you've chosen something to resurrect, and when you get into that assimilation, into that tomb, and that crucifixion, that crossing out, that release, that surrender, the Spirit of God begins to assimilate in you, and you step out in ascension, all that was negative is dissolved away, and it doesn't come forward with you into the higher life. You don't lose the good stuff. It transcends with you. But the negative stuff can't come forward into the presence of the Christ Spirit. We cannot touch anything or let anything touch us that will interrupt the new life that's being born, right? So in our doorways to consciousness, to God consciousness, they've been release. Pick something in your life you want to resurrect. Release everything that gets in the way of that. No more business as usual in bold and dramatic ways. Maybe you've got to put that cigarette out. You've got to make a decision to stop being critical. Whatever it is, release. And then awaken. This new life is stirring in you. And you surrender to everything that's not the highest expression of God. And then in that tomb, you assimilate. You're one-on-one with the Lord of your being, and you're assimilating this new life, this new way of living in the world. And then you come out of that tomb and you ascend. You ascend. You've left everything that was negative behind, and you're ascending into our next slide, which is resurrection. Resurrection. The victory of resurrection. Jesus demonstrated it for us. He said, I am the resurrection and the life. Let's put our hands on our heart and say that. I am the resurrection and the life. Right. Follow after me. Follow in my way. Follow my teachings. And then our last slide. Let's see. The resurrection is the raising up of your whole being, spirit, soul, and body, into the Christ consciousness, so that the Spirit of God can be released in more powerful and profound fullness in you than ever before. That's what that resurrection energy is in you. This is what Jesus did. The tomb could not hold his redeemed, purified, perfected body temple. And every time you rise to the realization of that internal indwelling life, the invisible power of the Holy Spirit quickens in you to help transform you with whatever you're moving through in the future. Any overcoming you need to make, any spiritual journey you're on, any speed bump in the road of your life, you have the demonstration of Jesus, of the power of overcoming to meet it successfully. So let's affirm our doorways that we've been working on through this series. Together, release it together. I give up so I can rise up. I awaken to the life force within me. I surrender all that is not the highest expression of God. I am one with the love of God. And I put love in there because you choose the spiritual attribute that you're resurrecting into. Is it joy? Is it peace? Is it strength? Is it life? Is it wholeness? But I thought love is a good one on Easter. I am one with the love of God. And next, I am ascending. And finally, I am the resurrection and the life. Today we celebrate the divine that is resurrected each time we roll away the stone of doubt, limitation, and fear. Today we join with Jesus in proclaiming, I am the resurrection and the life. The master teacher saying, I am the resurrection and the life. We affirm the doorways to God consciousness and say, not my will, but thine be done, so that my will and thine become one. And so it is. God bless you and happy Easter. So let's take that into a time of prayer as you're thinking about the resurrection energy and life within you, and how grateful we are for the grace and the redeeming power of the Spirit of Jesus Christ as he modeled for us and achieved total union with the Father. Take a deep breath in and quiet your mind. Drop into your heart space and call to mind whatever it is you're resurrecting today. And we start by saying thank you to the Spirit of Jesus Christ. For demonstrating the final overcoming. And from his fullness we have all received grace upon grace, the book of John says. And from his fullness we have all received grace upon grace. So in this morning's celebration, just for a moment, feel after the grace of God. Give thanks for all the times in your life when you've been saved. And our word this morning is, today I am filled with the grace of God. Today I am filled with the grace of God. Let's affirm it. Today I am filled with the grace of God. And there's a sevenfold affirmation that leads us in the beauty of this grace and resurrection. So let my words be your words, my voice be your voice. I am a child of the living God. I have within me all the creating powers of the Christ. Think about that as you think about the activity of your life you're resurrecting. I have within all the creating power of the Christ. It radiates from me and blesses all whom I contact. And then let the Creator be closed away now with the Lord of your being. And let the Creator infuse you with its Spirit. It is my life, my strength, my courage. It is my patience, my peace, my poise. It is my power, my wisdom, my understanding. Everything you need to break out of the tomb into the fullness of new life is with you and within you as the Christ Spirit. It is my joy, my inspiration, and my abundant supply. And unto this great power I entrust all my problems. Leave them all behind. And to this great power I entrust all my problems, knowing they will be solved in love and justice. New life is coming for you. New life is being born in you. The affirmation finishes, O Lord Christ, I have laid all my desires upon thine altar, and I rest in thy graciousness. And there's that word of grace again, the redeeming, saving grace of Spirit. It's pulled us out of many waters and set our feet on firm foundation. Today I am filled with the grace of God. Again, today I am filled with the grace of God. I am the resurrection and the life. Together, I am the resurrection and the life. And joining with the power of Jesus Christ, the living presence of Jesus Christ, we give thanks. We let our minds now radiate out to all those who we want to bless, our loved ones, our family, our friends. Again, our Unity community, our Auburn community, our world. Each place that needs the power of the resurrecting Spirit of God, we send forth that grace and that energy. We know that right here in this room, as a collective consciousness of peace, that our words have power, that our thoughts build up and restore. And so we let that be affirmed for our loved ones and everyone in our world. Every place there's conflict, we see peace, wisdom, guidance. We see the resurrection of the Christ Spirit bringing new life, new peace, new energy, new hope. And from his fullness we have all received grace upon grace. Gently, gently now let your attention return to this time and place, giving thanks for the celebration of new life. And together we all say,
Amen.
Amen.